I'm Tracy Walls, and I'd like to take a couple of minutes to tell you about the I&E course on Azure deployment and integration. This course is really about integrating workloads and migrating workloads from your on-prem environment into the Azure environment. We're going to talk first at, if you will, the lowest level, which is infrastructure integration, right? And infrastructure migration. Not only, okay, how do we move infrastructure over from our on-premises environment into Azure, but how do we facilitate a seamless coordination between what's on-premises and what's in Azure? And that's as important as being able to move that data over. And then we're going to move up a level, if you will, thinking about platform as a service and migrating applications and saying, okay, I've got this scenario where I've got a developer and I've got a web app, and the web app has a service, and maybe they're all on premises, but also maybe I want to start moving those over into the Azure environment. Well, again, same kind of thing. How do I make that happen? How do I architect my applications to facilitate that in a simple way that's meaningful and scalable? And how do I execute that as well? We're also going to talk about data migration. Of the topics we're going to talk about in this course, probably the most straightforward. So, okay, I've got some data, maybe it's on premises. How do I take that data and how do I move that data over into the Azure environment and still maintain connectivity to that data? And we're going to talk about DevOps integration. Now, this is not a DevOps course. DevOps is a great, very rich topic outside the scope of this course. What we're going to talk about is how we can integrate Azure into our DevOps pipelines. How can we use, let's say, for example, an Azure web app as an endpoint for a DevOps continuous delivery or continuous deployment pipeline? And so that's what we're looking at within the DevOps environment. And then finally, I want to talk about API management, right? If you go back and you think about that scenario that I just discussed a moment ago, where I've got a developer and they're working on premises and they've got various components of this application and they're good to go, and that's easy, right? But what happens when I want to start integrating that with external systems? I don't necessarily want to provide a direct endpoint to my services. And so that's where API management and the Azure API management service come into play. We're going to talk about that and what you can do with API management, how you can configure it to provide access to your services, whether they're on premises or in Azure, and then how you can make those available to external developers and external systems to really integrate with what your services are doing on-prem or in Azure. So that's what we're covering in this course. I hope this is content that's going to be of interest to you and that you join me over at ine.com for this course.